All right, my name is Michelle Trapasso, and I'm going to be doing a presentation based off of the American Marketing Association's webinar on brand coolness. All right, the most important reason that a brand needs to be considered cool to do well is because cool sells. Popular brands that we all know, including Off-White, Apple, Lululemon, social media platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and Snapchat have done exceptionally well for themselves because people consider them to be cool. Being uncool, unfortunately, can tank a brand, even though they may be well-funded or formerly popular. The example that they used in the study, even though this isn't exactly relevant at the moment, because Levi's is making a comeback, but I use Levi's and Segway. They were super cool at one point, and now they definitely lost their likability. What makes a brand cool is really interesting, and there's no real answer to this question because it's all very subjective, and it's up to the actual consumer and the individual that considers the brand cool or not. Even though there's lots of practitioner books on this and single domain academic research articles like Coolness in Technology, there's no large scale or systematic way or multi-component scale to determine coolness. Like I said, it's entirely subjective. It's up to the consumer. The definition of coolness as defined by Warren and Campbell in 2014 is a subjective and dynamic, socially constructed positive trait attributed to cultural objects inferred to be appropriately anonymous. As I was saying before, cool is in the eye of the consumer. So what brand perceptions create overall brand coolness? They conducted qualitative research in their study, and the question at hand is, what characteristics distinguish cool brands from uncool brands? In conducting their research, they focused primarily on respondents from Europe and the United States. They conducted focus groups, conducted in-depth interviews, and had people write short essays about what they considered to be cool and uncool in a brand. The results are that cool brands tend to have some of the same 10 components. And these 10 components include originality, authenticity, the characteristic of being rebellious, subcultural, have high status, be aesthetically pleasing, have high energy, and be extraordinary, iconic, and popular. How can firms validate the measure of the brand coolness? Researchers asked respondents from the US and Europe to rate brands from 1 to 5 based off of these 10 components that I just stated that make a brand cool or not. What are the payoffs to being cool? This is further digging into their quantitative research, but brand coolness predicts with a 32 to 72% variance that brands liking / favorability / attitude, consumers have a more favorable attitude towards cool brands. They also have a higher willingness to pay for these quote unquote cool brands. Like I said, consumers are willing to pay more money to acquire these cool brands. A lot of the time because they have a high sense of brand love, consumers are more likely to love and feel connected and appreciate cool brands, especially because of the self-brand connections. Consumers feel more connected with cool brands, meaning they feel more socially accepted and more desired in society when they're wearing and representing quote unquote cool brands. Just an overview of that, it goes from brand coolness to brand liking, and then down to brand liking / attributes, willingness to pay, and word of mouth. And brands really, really want to attain a positive word of mouth because that is some of the most powerful methods of marketing there is. Quantitative research, how do cool brands change? 148 members of an online community, which was Reddit, a subreddit group to be exact, that are interested in urban streetwear, nominated one of three types of fashion brands, Uncool, they were nominating Skechers and Gap, which is really sad because I love my Gap jeans. Niche Cool, which is cool to streetwear enthusiasts or cool to a very specific niche group of people. They can see how other people would think they're cool, but they don't really think they're cool. Is like Steady Hands, which is a brand that they make more basic clothing that has the tag hidden, and so the person wearing it knows it's Steady Hands brand. And another brand I hadn't heard of, which he pronounced but I couldn't, it was represented with the logo CE. And then Mass Cool, cool to the general population. In the study, people thought Supreme and Nike were cool on a mass scale. How do cool brands change continued? After gathering the responses from that Reddit subgroup, the researchers concluded that brands that are niche cool are more original, authentic, rebellious, and subcultural, and are highly liked with brand love and unwillingness to pay. Next is that combining niche cool and mass cool brands, it both scored high on being extraordinary, having energy, excitement, and dynamicism, and aesthetic appeal, and also having status, high status. Then just the mass cool brands, they were seen as just generally more popular and iconic, and having this aspect of familiarity, which is really important because they were very easily spotted and had that top of mind referencing that all brands want to attain. There's more positive word of mouth associated with these brands, and in general, they have higher prices, even though the quality isn't necessarily any better than uncool or niche cool brands. Implications, creating and managing that brand coolness. Diagnosis and strategy here. You can measure / evaluate your brand's current level of coolness versus competition at that component level. And the implementation and tactics. Alter the marketing mix to increase consumers' perception of your brand on a needed cool characteristics. Originality, and that's basically when you have your design of your product and your ad that's unlike any other on the market and differs from your competitors. If your brand is rebellious, that means you contrast your brand with more mainstream competitors. You do something highly different and gives you that edge. If a brand is iconic, that means they basically tell a story that resonates with consumers and makes them remember. Having a high brand energy, you're just constantly innovating. That's immediately what comes to my mind when I think of Tesla. It's just very energetic and new and exciting. Having an aesthetic appeal is when you create products and communication lines and retail spaces with a very specific look and feel to it, and that's generally what being aesthetic means. You have very eye-catching designs, and you have a specific smell to you, and it's your specific aesthetic that differentiates you from competitors. And then having high status means you have more premium pricing. Managing coolness, the coolness life cycle is super important because it shows how brands can jump back and forth between the life cycles. You can either have, like I said, uncool brands, niche cool brands, and then they all strive to be, that's actually, most brands strive to be mass cool brands. But like I was saying before, Levi's was a really popular brand. It was the mass cool brand. They took up almost 30% of all market share in the United States back in the 1900s. for jeans. And now they hold a very small market share. I mean, they are still a major competitor, but there's so many different jean companies. So they kind of faded into uncool brands, but then you have niche cool brands that make it into the mass cool brands category, and they're constantly transitioning between the life cycle over time. All right, that's pretty much it, but our contributors are the authors that conducted this study: Caleb Warren, Rajiv Batra, Sandra Maria Correa Loruero, Richard P. Baguzzi. They're all from various universities across the United States and across different countries. And this was all from the American Marketing Association's webinar on brand coolness. Thanks.